Hello, I'm Kendra Goldsboro, and I'm with Four Seasons Books in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And I'm very pleased to co-host tonight's event with the Contemporary American Theater Festival and welcoming back one of our favorite authors, Kara Lee Corthron, to celebrate the publication of her brand new young adult novel, Daughters of Jubilation. Daughters of Jubilation has been listed as Kirkus Review's top 10 books for young adults for this fall, and that's pretty amazing. While I miss seeing all of you in person, I do look forward to seeing you again soon. Enjoy tonight's event. Thank you so much.
Kara Lee, tell us a little bit about how you started writing this book and what's it like sort of jumping back and forth between television, playwriting, and sort of writing a novel.
Yeah, well, I started this book actually quite a while ago. It was like early 2016. And I intended to be done with it way before I was. What ended up happening was I did a couple of drafts, and I guess about a year later, maybe a year and a couple of months, I sent what was I considered the finished draft to my editor at the time. And she sat me down and we had a very serious come to Jesus moment when she's like, I think you have to start this book over. So and what's worse is that as soon as she said it, I knew she was right. And I was so angry because I'll tell you what it used to be. It used to be much bigger, but there is a character that only comes a couple of times in the book right now. It is the main character's granddaughter from the future. In the original draft, the book took place in two time periods, in 2016 and in 1962, and it went back and forth. So it was very, very different. And when I had this meeting with my editor, she said, it's Ebby's book. So you have to make it Ebby's book. And I kind of knew it was, but I really didn't want to know that. So I had to kind of go back and it took more time. And then she left my publisher. I got other editors. So there were a lot of different incantations. And also at the same time, like you were saying, I was being a playwright and being a teacher and doing other things. Yeah, I much prefer to have like one big project I can focus on and just really dig my teeth into. But mainly for economic reasons, I can't do that, which is why I started writing for television. And I think because we have to go so quickly in TV and also we can't get too attached to things because they ultimately don't belong to us anyway, I think that's helped me to sort of just let things roll off my back a little better. It's like, okay, well, this doesn't work. I have to do that. Okay, well, now I have to work on the prose today. Okay, I have to do that. And not like I used to get very like, I don't feel like working on this. This is not where my inspiration is. But sometimes you have to go you have to work where the deadline is. So that's kind of how that came.
Well, I hope that you're continuing to write plays because, we definitely want you to come back to CATF and do another play with us. So we expect to see new scripts soon. So get those too.
Find inspiration.
That's right.
Well, and Peggy, what looking back to 2017 when CATF produced Welcome to Fear City, can you talk a little bit, Kara Lee, about that experience working with Peggy and with Ed and the crew that was there that summer and what that was like for a playwright and an artist?
Yeah, it was a cool experience. Kind of one of those weird camp-like experiences because we're all sort of isolated in Shepherdstown, many of us coming from other places. So there is sort of a very dorm-like, and we were in a dorm. There's a sense of like, oh, my director's across the hall. I have a question, let me knock, and she's in her slippers, and so there was that kind of like fun energy a little bit, and it was summer, so that kind of added to it. But I feel like Ed and Peggy and the people at CATF were so supportive. Like anything that came up, they really tried to make happen within like what was available to us. I felt like we were super supportive. I did a lot of rewriting and going back and forth with the script, and I never got any issue with it. It's totally like it's about the play and what the play needs to be. So that was really cool. I almost got to use it like a workshop, which was awesome. And then I had a full production. So yeah, it was a cool experience. And Peggy are pretty awesome.
Well, and the production was fantastic. The aesthetics, I thought, of the set. This is 1977, over 40 years at the time, 40 years ago exactly.
Oh,
Can you
right.
reflect a little on that work, given what's unfolded in 2020? You know, some of the themes that you were using a story from decades ago to, talk about. Now we look and say, those are still very much things that we are dealing with as a society and as a nation. Reflect on the story you told and how you think it continues to apply as these things unfold on our TV screens and our browsers.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to say that we relate so easily to it, and we see, how our my people are being treated often. And the reason I chose that period and that style, that actually wasn't from a political standpoint. That was from a theatrical fun standpoint. Of like, this is something that could be fun for me to actually learn about. I wasn't around at that time, and I wanted to learn more about it. And I also had this interest in New York City history. So what ended up coming out politically, that just kind of organically arose from the work and from the characters and the world. Um, and honestly, if you read the book, there are some similar themes in this book. Because I feel like dealing with just how entrenched white supremacy is in this country it's going to take a while before it's not relevant, unfortunately. So
It'd
expect to
be,
see more.
and well, you mentioned that Daughters Daughters of Jubilation, your novel, is also a period piece. 1962, was it?
Mhm,
When
yes.
you write to write authentically about those times, does that require a great deal of research on your part? And what sort of resources do you use to do that research?
Not really. I'm not like a huge research person. I did some though. I did sort of a crash course in civil rights in summer of 62, just kind of reminding myself kind of where we were on the timeline. But most of the research I did was about traditions of Black folk magic, and that sort of inspired me to kind of almost make a jumbo, Jesus, a gumbo, like a thing here, something there, and put it together, and that ended up sort of being the basis of Jubilation, more or less. So that was most of the research I did. Honestly, though, as far as her voice, I feel like I grew up hearing that so much because of where I'm from. And very, very late in this process, I realized that Evie is sort of one of the reasons I wrote Evie is to understand my mother a little bit more, because this is my mom's generation, and she's no longer with us, and so she didn't get to read the book. But she was very secretive. Like, she was very much about, we go forward, we live our day to day, we don't need to dig into the past. um so every now and then I would just hear this weird tidbit like, oh, that was my ex-husband. And you had another husband, like these little things. And she didn't really talk much about, yeah, right, and that was real, just like,
Big.
it's kind of big, just throw it out there. And she really wouldn't talk much about being a teenager, though I knew from yearbooks I saw that she was both a cheerleader and a basketball player, and like very well liked by her peers. So I think in some weird, like subconscious way, I was imagining, I wonder what mom might have gotten into if she had a different trajectory back in her day.
You wrote a letter to your 15-year-old self. I got a chance to read that. It, well, it's out there for folks. If you Google 15-year-old letter and Kara Lee, you'll find that. But um, it sounded like at that time in your life you were dealing with some of the very things that the protagonist Evie deals with in this book, teenage sort of things, which some people dismiss as, okay, that's teen, but these are serious issues. And especially today, I think with social media and everything else that's out there, these issues are exacerbated. But was it hard for you, and maybe you didn't even try not to, was this book at all autobiographical, minus certain elements? Was there some of you in Evie, or is that all, is she your mother? Talk about sort of how you either keep yourself out of this or bring yourself into it.
It's not autobiographical. I swear I know how to pronounce that word. Um, though, like I was saying, there are these pieces of my mom that I realized later, not at the time. It really wasn't a conscious decision. It was just kind of happening. And I think that there's always some kind of piece of myself almost in all of my characters and whatever I write. But I'm not really an autobiography type person. Like I'm much more about imagined worlds and imagined situations. So that's not really based on anything that happened to me personally. Though again, there are tidbits. There's even a little story that her grandmother tells, which is based on something that happened to a relative of mine. So it's like these little like sprinkles that you can see of like my family lineage that kind of pop up.
What about the powers? Is that something that 15-year-old you would have liked to have gone through? Discovering you have those?
I want them now.
I know.
Right? I say silly question, silly question.
Never stopped wanting those. Oh my
every
gosh.
day you
Yeah,
just
I
sort of
wish.
wake up.
Please, man.
Well,
Don't I wish?
and that's, and but that's sort of the nice thing when you get to read about, and I got to read a couple of excerpts from the book, and you're going to share some with us here in just a little while. But as you read through it, it's the story of a character that I think you can relate to, and she and I don't have a lot in common on the surface. I'm an adult white male. She is a young teenage person of color, a female. But I think it's interesting to me how some of those issues that you address, some of the things, whether it's something like, oh, I want superpowers, or I'm insecure, or I have these, there are things that draw you in. And I think that's what makes art powerful, is that anybody can find something to relate to and hopefully get a different perspective when you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly hope so, because she's very much a human, even though she has this superhuman ability that, she has to grapple with a bit. So I would hope people can find something in there that they can understand.
It worked for me, and like I say, I'm probably not not exactly what what you would have in mind as your target audience, but there are so many elements in there just in what I read that I thought were really cool. So you've done a good job, I think, setting the stage for a good story, and I can't wait to read more. Kara Lee, you're gonna read to us here a little bit. Is this now tell us a little bit before we jump into what you're about to read. We've referenced Evie. I don't think we've really given a synopsis of the story. So is this chapter 1? Is this just an excerpt from the middle? What are you reading, and sort of give us the cliff notes of the book?
Sure. I'm going to read chapter 1 because I think it's a pretty nice introduction, excuse me, to who Evie is, and you don't have to have any information beforehand. This literally is the beginning of the book. Yeah, this is so in a very tight nutshell. Daughters of Jubilation is about the youngest in a long line of magical Black women who have developed these specific, very specific superpowers, really to combat oppression. If you like break it down and look at the reasons why it has evolved and why it comes out. But Evie's mom, Evie's the main character, her mom kind of traded her abilities, or tried to, for God. Like she felt more connected to Christianity. She sort of saw their abilities as devilment, so she pushed it away. As a result, she hasn't explained to Evie what's really happening to her. So she has to reach out to her estranged grandmother to kind of become her tutor, her teacher in the ways of jubilation. And this is during this summer when she's 16 years old in South Carolina, while she's discovering these powers and learning about them, and also falling in love and other stuff. It's a broad nutshell.
Gumbo, right? You said gumbo.
Gumbo. It's a gumbo. Just more gumbo. So great. So I'll go ahead and read this.
Great.
Right. This is chapter 1. It's called Savior. Here's the thing about me. I ain't normal. Never have been, never will be. So that's my private business and nobody else's. I got no interest in drawing attention to myself for any reason other than my good looks and memorable personality. They don't understand what I did yesterday, so they're making a big fuss. I hate it. What am I supposed to do? Refuse a newspaper interview when my mother's so proud she finna combust? Can you remember what you were thinking when you first noticed that something was wrong? A young reporter asks me. If I didn't know better, I think he was in high school too. Nothing, I say. I could just tell it was gonna fall, so I had to get them out of the way. This is silliness. Who wouldn't have done what I did? He asks a few more questions. Then he makes me pose for a photo with the family, the Pritchards. They flash toothy smiles at me, their savior, Had I not been there yesterday when a big old oak tree was about to fall on them and their new shiny T-Bird convertible, we would not be sitting here all sweet and harmonious. The flashbulb blinds me, and I'm finally free to go. Mr. and Mrs. Pritchard thank me once again. Their toddlers run circles around us, and Mrs. Pritchard's fat with another one on the way. T-Bird ain't exactly a family car, but that's none of my business. You should come over to our house for supper one night, she offers. In a fraction of a second, Mr. Pritchard shoots her a look. Ain't no way in hell he's ever gonna let me step foot in his house. Not that I want to go. Plus, white people can't cook. Thank you, but I'm just glad y'all are safe, I say in my good girl voice, with my forced good girl smile. I leave the newspaper office's steps with Mama beaming beside me. I'ma stop saying it, but I'm so proud of you, baby. You're brave and selfless. Honestly, I just didn't have time to think, I say. That means saving folks is just who you are then. Don't lessen it. This is a great thing you done. We get to the bus stop and wait. What you want to eat tonight? I'll make whatever you want, and you don't even have to help me. Maybe chicken and dumplings, I tell her. Should have known. I was guessing you'd say shrimp and grits, but chicken and dumplings would have been my second guess, she says. I might have said shrimp and grits, but the last time I asked for it, she complained about the rising price of certain kinds of fish, so I thought it was off limits. She bumps me with her shoulder, and I can't help but grin. It's a weird, affectionate thing she used to do when I was little. Mama doesn't know the whole story, though. I'm not a hero. It's the end of a mostly mild spring. There was no storm or high winds, no reason for a giant oak like that to just plummet to the ground. I was fooling around because I got mad. I'd ridden my trusty Schwinn into a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Hadn't meant to. I just wasn't paying attention. I stopped to figure out where I was and how I ended up there when a man approached me. Who do you belong to? He asked, giving me the dirtiest look. No one. I just got lost, I explained, backing me and my bike away from him. I suggest you get unlost before you catch some real trouble, he barked. And then he marched across the street to the car where his wife and kids waited for him. The wife was hollering at the little ones to get in the car, but they didn't pay her no mind. When he got to the driver's side door, before getting in, he said something to the woman, and she got closer to him. They talked for a few more seconds. I was too far away to hear what they said. And the wife looked over at me, shaking her head in disgust, like the very sight of me was ruining their whole day. That old oak tree was big enough and near enough that I thought, wouldn't it be something for these folks to have an accident right now? It was a quick thought, and I didn't think I meant it, but it didn't matter. A sharp headache ripped through me, and the tree started rocking at the bottom of its trunk, and it kept on rocking harder and harder. I couldn't believe my eyes. I tried to make it stop, but then I heard the unmistakable creaking sound of wood starting to snap. I ran over and shoved the family out of the way, all of them. And then the tree came down, crushing that shiny new car. Once they got over the initial shock, the kids started crying and screaming, and their parents tripped over each other, thanking me. I made the mistake of telling them my name, which is how the newspaper found me. So yeah, sure. I guess I saved the Pritchards from certain death. But nobody knows I tried to kill them first.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for reading.
Thank you.
Very outside of a book on tape, I don't get to see the person who creates the work actually read it and bring it to life. It's a real treat for me. So thank you for doing that.
Well, of course.
It's pretty cool to hear something. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice.
You know, I mentioned before that there were some things about this book, this story that resonated with me from the genre all the way to sort of the way a teenager might think. Obviously, that's true for a lot of people. You got a significant amount of buzz when this came out back in October. Teen Vogue, BuzzFeed News. You had, I think it was the book of the month for October for Amazon, which is saying something in a year when we've all been locked indoors for 5 months, reading a lot. So, I mean, that's really a feather in your cap. Were you pleased with that reception? And did it surprise you at all? Or did you know that this was going to be something special?
Wow, that's a cool question. Um, I was very pleased, and I was surprised. I mean, I knew on some level that there was going to be a little bit more talk about this one than my first book, just from kind of some inklings I was getting. I had no idea it was going to be what it ended up being. And I'm still kind of bowled over. There was a lot of really great reception, and I so appreciate it.
What's it like as an author to suddenly see your work pop up that way, to get the calls about, hey, we want to do an interview, or so and so wants to do an interview? Is there a, pinch yourself, this is real kind of moment?
I had a couple of pinch myself, this is real kind of moments. Yeah, it's just like when something, and it's like, it doesn't even have to be like a big thing, but for instance, you brought up Amazon, and I got, my publicist was like, "Did you see this?" And she sent me this screenshot. There was like a period of several weeks in October where my book was the number one new release in, it's some category like diverse family or something, but it was like, it held steady at number one for a while. And the the Kindle edition was number 4. So, and I was like, what? Are you serious? And I even kept looking later. I was like, is this real? Like, did she like make this? Like, no, it was that moment. I was like, okay, I don't feel like this is really happening. That doesn't make any sense. So somebody's buying this book. That was probably the most surreal moment I've had. But all the other things, and I mean, I love it when people I haven't heard from in a long time just like reach out and they're like, hey, I read your book. I loved it. And it's like, thank you. Thank you so much. Like, those are really heartwarming moments, because it's like, oh, you didn't have to read that. We don't really have an active relationship. So it wasn't a favor to me. You just wanted to. And that's really nice.
The book is Daughters of Jubilation. Kara Lee Corthron is the author. She's with us today. We're at Four Seasons in Shepherdstown, where you can, by the way, get autographed copies after December the 14th. That is something you cannot get on Amazon. So if you're looking for an awesome gift for a young adult, if you're looking for an awesome gift for the adult in your life, an art lover, a theater lover who's a fan of Kara Lee's, then I encourage you to come down here to Shepherdstown and pick up an autographed copy after December the 14th. Also, if you are interested in buying that book online, you can do so at fourseasonsbooks.com. It's seasons plural, F-O-U-R, seasonsbooks.com, or call 304-876-3486. Peggy, McKnowen, and Hans Fogle along for the ride this evening. Anybody who has questions also for Kara Lee, please do put those in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, and she's obviously very engaged and interested in hearing from her audience. So we appreciate that about you.
I'm
I
raising
mentioned
my
young
hand
adult.
because I have a
I
question.
couldn't see. I'm sorry. They had it all minimized. Peggy has a question. Please jump.
I do have a
jump
question.
in.
So, Kara Lee, I was listening to you read this, and I was thinking about the play Welcome to Fear City 2, and I feel like there's a kind of rhythm to the language that you use, right? There's it seems to have a kind of cadence, and I wonder if that's just purely instinct in the way that you write, or whether you have something going on in your head that makes you want to sort of follow that cadence as you're writing the language and the words.
That's interesting. And in a way, maybe it's a little of both. Um, I think that, again, I think I was saying earlier, like a lot of these rhythms were kind of around me when I was a baby, like growing up. So some of them just feel kind of innate to me. There's a specific kind of Black Southern rhythm. Um, but I am also, I'm more conscious with plays, like in Fear City, for instance, because I so want the language, it's going to be auditory, to hit the ear right, and for an audience to connect in that way. I don't think about it as much with prose, but yeah, so it is something that I think I do a little bit instinctively, even though I'm a little bit conscious of it at the same time. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
This is a young adult novel, but you talk about some really mature themes in here. And why do you think that it's important that we address those in literature and have the conversations about them?
Well, I think it's really about us trying to further civilization and humanity and compassion. I don't really have an interest in writing a story that isn't going to say much beyond, oh, cool story. People fell in love, and that's it. Like, there's always going to be something of the world, and how the world affects our lives in that story. Um, because yeah, I think that we we need, it's that idea of contact theory, but I guess in the form of art. It's like, you know, I think there need to be so many representations of people of different races, different abilities, different gender, sexualities, and to see them being human, just human, being a person. Um, and I don't think that I don't think that will ever not be important. I think we always have to keep furthering it to make sure that, I mean, as I've seen, or as we've all seen with, the rise of the Proud Boys and all of all of this, but I don't think we can take compassion for granted. So I do think it's something that we really have to work actively at.
There's a lot of divides right now that we have in our country. Do you believe that art can be an effective way to start important conversations and maybe bring people back together, or are we too far gone?
I never think that we're too far gone, because we are still breathing, and neuroscience has taught us that we can change our brains very, very late, into very, very late years in our life. So I think things are possible. I do think that art can lead to great conversations. I don't know that we've always figured out the way to do that or to make it happen. Sometimes I feel like it's like, now we will ask the audience what they thought about this issue. It's tricky. I think we're still trying to figure out how to engage art with consumers of art, but I do think that it's a conversation worth having, and I think we need to continue to figure it out.
Got some questions from our audience
Oh,
this
yes.
evening. First of all, would you share your writing process, particularly when you're actually starting on a big project?
Sure. It's so funny. Like, I always feel like I have to like remind myself, like, wait, how did I do this before? Like, literally, like every time I'm like, did this happen? Right. Like, I published a book, because I'm like, I don't remember. I don't know. Um, so yeah, I have to go through that period of feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing, which is brief. Um, and I think the thing that I'm always looking for, which takes longer with certain projects than others, but I need to find the moment where I'm a little bit addicted to the writing, a little bit hooked. And in this case, with Authors of Jubilation, it was Evie's voice that hooked me, that came on so strong that I couldn't ignore it. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's an image. Sometimes it's the story itself that then I get excited about. Like, where is this going to go? How am I going to make this happen? Can I make this happen? So once I get there, then it's a lot easier for me to just sort of take off. But it does take me some time to figure that out. It takes me a little bit to figure out what is the thing that's really important to me. What's that crumb that's going to make me actually think about this before I go to sleep or while I'm in the shower. And
Shower thoughts
because of
kill me.
deadlines. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Say shower thoughts kill me. They're so fleeting.
They are indeed. I think what I was just going to say is that with deadlines, sometimes I don't have the luxury of getting that great, beautiful moment. So in that case, usually I will just jump in fully aware that I'm writing shit, and that's okay. Like, if there are days when I'm like, I haven't found the thing yet, but I need to start writing. I need to get something on paper because the deadline's coming up. In doing that, I'll find the thing. And then I know I can just, throw out a bunch of pages and it's fine.
Deadline obviously makes some difference with this, but in terms of what you're writing, novel, screenplay, an actual play itself? Does it make a difference for that process at all?
Not well. Yeah, I mean, I guess the deadline is kind of the biggest thing because, like, for instance, I'm doing a rewrite on a TV script this week, and I have to do it because I have a deadline. Like, I have to kind of figure it out, and I can't kind of just put it on the back burner and sit on it a while. I have to just kind of do it. So that approach is very different. Whereas, for instance, if I had just gotten notes on a manuscript of a novel, that's not the case. But if I had, it just, the timeline is different, and I would give myself some time to let that sink in and then start kind of slowly so that I don't just like do a rush job. Whereas in TV, it's pretty much all rush jobs, and that's fine. So it really kind of depends on the situation. And the same with plays. I mean, at least in my case, there are a few times when you have like a super tight line with plays, unless you're absolute like in a process. When you're not, it's pretty much you can take the time that you need.
Another question from our audience. Robin saw Holly Down in Heaven in Silver Spring, said she really enjoyed it and wants to know if there are plans for any upcoming productions once the pandemic's behind us.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And no.
Is that a consequence of the pandemic? It's just too hard to forecast and put the money into planning for that?
I don't know. I mean, the most recent play I wrote, I had a couple of workshops in 2019. And, I guess it was like December 2019 was the last thing that had happened. So we were maybe thinking of trying to like send it out more in 2020, and then the pandemic happened. And so I don't know like what's going on with theaters. I know some theaters are still trying to have seasons. They're doing kind of different virtual things. I haven't felt like a huge desire to be concerned about it, if that makes sense. I feel like when theater needs to happen again, it's going to happen again. And I have a play I like. Hopefully somebody else will like it too. I don't feel, I guess, stressed about it in a certain way. And maybe part of that is just because I haven't had much time because I've been so focused on TV lately. But yeah, so as of December 8th, no productions coming up.
December 9th may be a different story.
Yeah. Have you let go of that play? I hear playwrights sometimes say that once it's had a production and it's kind of moved out into the world, it's easy to let it go, right? And so you're not as concerned about it. You're not thinking about it as much. Do you feel like you've let that one go already?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mean Holly Down in Heaven? The one? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's, yeah. It's a great play, but I don't feel like that's something I need to like kind of supervise anymore. It's only had that one professional production, but it's actually had multiple college and university productions, which actually makes a lot of sense because of the age of the cast. But yeah, I have not gotten to see most of those, but I'm always supportive, and I'm sure they're doing crazy things, and I'm totally happy with that.
Kara Lee, one member of our audience this evening recalls Fear City as not being a light play, and based on your reading of Daughters, it sounds like there's an ironic humor. They'd like to know why the change in mood for this story.
Well, there definitely is humor in Welcome to Fear City. It's a dark.
I would say yes.
But there's absolutely humor in Welcome to Fear City. Yeah, to be honest, it might be a similar humor because I think maybe my sense of humor sort of plays out in the different stuff I write. I wouldn't say Daughter's Jubilation is a light book, though. I think there are a lot of light moments I wanted there to be, and I wanted there to be moments of fun. But it's about some pretty dark stuff, and the stakes are pretty high. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, I think Welcome to Fear City is pretty funny, but that's my opinion.
Well, I was going to ask you too, that we have often heard playwrights say that humor is one of the ways that you can draw the audience in a little bit and then share something that is a sort of darker or more kind of compelling argument. I just wondered if you feel like you use that same sort of technique too, that humor helps you get to the other things you're talking about in a way.
Yeah, I mean, humor does, also magic does. I mean, I think like genre kind of is helpful in that way as well, like sci-fi. Yeah, like I like employing it as a tool in that way. But on the other hand, I also, and this probably just comes from writing so much stuff. It's just none of us are totally serious. We have humor, we have things that we can't laugh about. And so I feel like humor is always going to be a part of something if you're writing about real humans, like three-dimensional people. So a little of both there.
Well, how many fantastic memes have come out of the COVID pandemic? I mean, it's a very serious thing. People are losing their livelihoods, they're using their lives, but at least in among your friends and maybe as a people, we still we use humor to get through some of the tragedy.
It's also like survival. It's totally a survival technique. Yeah, absolutely.
Another question, and it's sort of similar to this, you use magic to talk about being human. What does it enable you to do, having characters with those powers that having characters without them would limit you?
Interesting. Um, well, one of the things that's a weird sort of quiet message that's in the book that some people will get, some people won't, and I'm totally cool with that. But is that we all have a certain kind of magic anyway, even if it's not as blatant as Evie's. There's the character of Miss Corinthia Tuttle, who Evie meets at her 100th birthday party. Like, this woman is super old. And she meets her, and this woman also has jubilation. She has this power. And Evie is kind of shocked. Like, they sort of sense each other immediately in this like big party. And she talks to her, and Evie's like, why do we have this? Why is it that certain people can do this and other people can't? Still sort of thinking of it as like, is this a disease? I don't know, like, why? And she says, why are some people able to paint the Sistine Chapel? Like, why are some people able to play music that sounds like angels have sung it? Like, she's like, this is our thing, but that's not the only kind of magic in the universe. We've just stopped seeing things as magic. So that's sort of my belief, is that this is her magic, but that doesn't mean that it's so outside of the realm of possibility, because there are a lot of things that we still just don't know. But what does it enable me to do? I think that there's an interesting ability to manifest what's inside somebody's mind with Evie in a cool way, or emotionally what's happening. I don't want to keep giving things away, but there's a moment where she spontaneously causes all of the children around her to start laughing hysterically. And it's because she's sort of feeling this silliness and this joy, and she doesn't even realize she's doing it or mean to. And I think there's something really interesting about seeing what our emotional backbone or subconscious, whatever you want to call it, what would happen if that suddenly was outside of yourself. And a lot of that's what's happening with Evie.
One of our viewers is thinking about facilitating a mother-daughter lunch book discussion group, and thinks that this seems like an engaging book to discuss together, and is looking for advice you might have to get things started and topics of discussion.
Oh, interesting. What would I want to discuss? Oh my gosh, that's like, I feel like that's like a homework question that like I didn't prepare for. Like, I haven't thought about that.
Didn't tell you about the essay portion.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess like really starting as simply as, what about this book drew you in, if anything? Did you, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, like, did you see any ways in which you relate to Evie and her journey, or did it feel totally foreign to you? I feel like talking about both story and character can be a really great way in, and then deeper things can come up as you go. But that's my answer, having never been asked this question, and it's a hard one.
Can I ask this question in a slightly different way? So, you talked about your mother earlier, and maybe this was a way to sort of connect with some of the thoughts of her life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you were sitting down to discuss this book with your mother, what do you think some of the things are that the two of you would discuss?
That's a lovely, funny question. Well, I feel like First of all, she would be like, why do you have them having sex so fast? Like, that would really bother her. Like, what are you? So she's fast. That was something she would say a lot. Oh, she's fast. And I would have to talk about sex positivity with her. And that would be an interesting discussion. But yeah, I think beyond that, I think she would really love the grandmother character. I think she would see a lot of herself in that, even though I'm seeing her more as like young Abby. But I think she would really connect to her, and she would recognize some of the things in it, like a couple of like little moments. There is like the story that was told. She'd say, "Yeah, that happened to Great Aunt Margaret. You remember that?" Like, so it would actually start probably unearthing other things, which is what would happen when I talk about anything with my mom. So yeah.
But I think you say things that any mother-daughter would talk about, like the issue of sex and what that means in your life, right? But also being able to reference stories like that of the lineage of women in everyone's life, right? I think that's a pretty cool way to have those conversations with mother-daughters too. So
Totally. I think that's a great way, because I was forgetting it's mother-daughter. That's right. It's right in the question. I think that's a great way to think about it.
Kara Lee, this story checks a lot of boxes right now, I think, in terms of themes. It's a young adult. You've got superpowers, which is all the rage in Hollywood. Could this novel translate into other medium, whether that's a movie, a play, or television?
Yeah. I'm in like super, super duper early conversations about what this might look like being adapted to television. The idea is that I actually would be the adapter. What's interesting, and I think we were talking before maybe the audience joined us, about what happens when you see a work of yours adapted in some other form by someone else, and how you have to like let go of it and realize that that's a whole other animal. And what's interesting is that in sort of working on how I see this show, and with people I've been talking to about it, I have to do a little bit of that too, which is, it's actually kind of cool. I thought it would be painful, but it's not. Like, there are just certain things that I know immediately would have to change for television. And so I've been thinking about it as definitely its own project, its own piece of art, even though it springs from Daughters of Jubilation. But yes, so we're talking about it. There was an offer made, and my lawyer sent a counter offer. Now I'm waiting to see what happens. I'll
Fingers
keep you
crossed,
posted.
man.
that would be so cool. And would it be a serial thing or a movie for TV or?
It would be a series, and my idea actually is that every episode would take place in two different time periods. So in a way, it's almost going back to my original idea, but a little bit different. And then like what in doing that, then it's kind of become the tagline. My managers are like, this is us with black witches. So it's like, so it kind of just becomes a little bit of a different animal. Again, I'm seeing it as like its own thing, and being able to separate myself from the book, which is kind of fun.
Now, this story is not finished, correct?
Which story? I'm sorry.
That is so you've got your first book, which is available now at Four Seasons Bookstore in Shepherdstown, but there's more story to tell, correct? You've got another novel that's going to be part of this story.
Oh, is this like a novel series? I see what you're saying. Maybe. I'm not
Depending on
sure.
time.
It's like, I know I'm on because my plan was that I wanted to do, first it was like a trilogy, and I wasn't sure if it needed to be something else, but I definitely had an idea of doing that with the books. And then the talk about the series came up, and I started using those ideas when talking about the series. So I was like, which comes first, the TV show or the book? I don't know. So it would be funny if like I wrote a show and then wrote a book based on it. I don't know.
Well, J.R.R. Martin's doing it, right, with Game of Thrones. His whole TV series finished, and now
That's me. I'm the
see, that'll be your canary in the
JR.
mind. You can test it.
Right.
Has the pandemic given you time to focus on this work, or has it kept you busier than ever?
Yeah, no. It's kept me really busy. Because of working on TV, we've moved into Zoom writers' rooms, which is really convenient. but as a result, I'm kind of always busy. I sort of feel like I'm always at work. Though, with 40% of the population being food insecure right now, I feel super, super lucky that I've been employed almost nonstop through this pandemic. I think there was like a week and a half where I wasn't. So I'm really lucky that, and this, my industry's been hit really hard, but I've been able to keep working. So I feel really fortunate about that.
And that's, I heard that statistic on the way here, 1 in 6 adults and 1 in 4 children. It's staggering right now, just exacerbated by what's going on. So thanks for bringing that up. I think people need to be mindful that there are those who are really in need right now. Kara Lee, on that, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about any projects you want to promote or anything you have coming up with the audience before we wrap up this evening.
Is there anything that I want to promote?
Other than the book, I mean,
you should
obviously.
watch, if you have or want to have HBO Max, The Flight Attendant has just premiered, and I'm a writer on that staff, and I wrote one of the episodes. If you have Netflix and you haven't watched You season 2, I'm a writer on that series as well. And yeah, I think that's all that's like kind of right now in the ether that might be of interest.
Well, we're gonna read the book and we're gonna watch with great interest to see what develops. I don't know about you, Peggy. I'm super excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, a little brush with, the supernatural magic of her artistry, right? It's very much in keeping with the book.
And once everything's back to normal, we can't wait to welcome you back to Shepherdstown.
Yes.
It'll be so fun to come back. Thank you.
We'll save you a slot in summer camp, just like old times.
That's right.
Yeah, but really, it's a pleasure that you could reach out to us this evening virtually, break a leg and everything you're doing right now, and we're gonna really look for stuff with your name on it.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
Awesome.
This was a great interview. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Great voice and great opportunity to share. And Peggy McKnowen, thank you so much for being on this evening as well.
Thank you, Hans, for taking care of us.
Reminder, everybody, the book is called Daughters of Jubilation. We are going to have this available right now at Four Seasons Bookstore in Shepherdstown. And if you would like an autographed copy, you can pick those up after December the 14th, well in time for the holiday gift giving season. This is something you can't pick up on Amazon. You're not going to be able to find them anywhere but eBay for thousands and thousands of dollars. So you can come and get them at a reasonable price now before it becomes a hit series or a giant movie or whatever, and say, I was there on the night that we talked about that way back during the 2020 pandemic. So Kara Lee, thank you so much. And
Yes,
we'll talk to you again
thank you.
soon. Peggy, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for continuing to support the arts. It is an incredibly important part of who we are as a nation, as a people. Conversations like this help us think and change our perspective. Thanks to the Contemporary American Theater Festival and Four Seasons Books for hosting the event this evening. And thank you to the West Virginia Humanities Council for their support of this event. The webinar is going to be open for a few minutes if you want to share final thoughts in the chat. And again, fourseasonsbooks.com. And be sure to head over this evening to the Speak Story series. That's speakstoryseries.com. Join our partners, Speak Story Series, for their concert with Elizabeth Rose. That's getting underway here in just a few moments. Thank you for joining us. Good night. Stay safe. Enjoy your holiday. And remember, 2020 turned out not to be a year for getting everything that we want, but certainly a year for being grateful for everything that we have. Stay blessed, everybody. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Kara Lee.
Thanks, Peggy.
Bye.